The agenda this week went deep at the Great Lakes Public Forum. We explored areas of concern across the waterways, assessed how climate change is hitting the lakes in various ways, and heard Indigenous perspectives on these waters. The Week in Review begins with a binational assessment of the state of the Great Lakes. How do you measure how healthy or not the Great Lakes are?
Wow, that is a wonderful question, and one that we wrestle with, and part of the challenge that we have is working with the scientists and getting the science right. And we do work with scientists. Neither of us are scientists, but we're very science-focused and dependent at the IJC. But also communicating to the public in ways that is compelling and understandable. So what do you measure when in the lakes? When you go to a doctor, does the doctor just measure your blood pressure? Does the doctor look in your eyes? Or, what are the measurements? And they all count. And so this is a question. But one of the successes that we've had, I think, in the last 3 years with governments and among ourselves is to get that list down to a much shorter list. It's still long, but it's much shorter, and we'll be able to communicate better with the public. But at the bottom line is the water drinkable? Can we eat the fish? And can we swim in the water? Those are what everything else boils down to.
How do you answer those questions today?
Well, I think you
we
have
do drink the water here on Lake Ontario,
yes.
obviously.
I think, first of all, you'd have to say that things are better than what they were. Now, the question is, when was the were that you are thinking about? And if you're thinking about the 1960s, Lake Erie, for instance, had become a very deplorable river. It was a lake. It was a sad situation. The Cuyahoga River had caught on fire. There were the entire lake had been declared dead. It was because of phosphorus. Most of it was coming out of sewage plants. A lot of it was coming out of the laundry products that people were using. And the IJC had made some recommendations that brought about the changes. They brought about, for instance, the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement that you're probably well familiar with, and they brought about changes even in laundry soap. The makers of Rinso or whatever the product was. I shouldn't identify anyone on the air,
yeah,
but
they took the phosphates out of it.
They were saying you'll never have another white shirt. They will all be gray from now on. Well, that wasn't the case. And somehow or another, the problem got solved. And Lake Erie became, in 20 years' time, it became, by the 1990s, a poster child around the world as one of the best lakes that one could ever find. Best for fishing. $billion fishing industries that were created there.
It came back.
And all of that came back. Some of it started to slip in the past 15 years. That's another problem. That's another challenge that we're faced with right at this minute.
Well, you have what are called areas of concern. That's a technical term in your business.
Yep.
How many are there?
Well, there's 64 that were identified areas of concern. And that was originally on an IJC recommendation. But the number's dwindling a bit because some have graduated or been moved off the list.
Okay, and how bad does it have to be before you become an area of concern?
Really bad.
Really bad.
Really bad.
And
so you can't drink the water, you can't fish there.
Well, you can't do a number of things. And what they do in these areas, that they actually list the impairments. How many things are impaired? Can you fish, or can you swim? Can you do certain things? And as they clean them up, in order to graduate off the list, you have to be able to have recovered those uses, all of the uses, and it's complicated. I want to say here, the government spent in today's dollars billions of dollars after the Cuyahoga River, et cetera, in the Lake Erie in its worst days, and they invested that money in mostly wastewater treatment plants. And so took care of that problem, but it wasn't free. It wasn't free. It was retroactive, but then it became preventive, and that's great. Now we're looking at these things, and they're spending one of them can cost more than $1 billion to clean up. Prevention, prevention, prevention. It is so much cheaper for the taxpayer to prevent. These places cost a fortune and take decades to clean up.
Well, that may explain some of the numbers I'm going to present here, because Here's what I've got. 7 out of 43 areas of concern have been ameliorated since 1987. 16%. Now, some people might say that's not a hell of a lot of progress for 3 decades worth of work. Well,
yeah,
how would you?
But you're forgetting one thing in it, and that is the beneficial uses. And so these 14 beneficial uses that have been identified for each of the areas, in many, many cases, have been improved substantially. And while they've not been completely eliminated, the improvement is such that some of the beneficial uses have been restored entirely. So I think, generally speaking, at least a third of the beneficial uses are back, so that has to be taken into account. But if you're also getting into the numbers, it has to be kept in mind that the billions have been spent on the American side and on the Canadian side. I mean, Port Hope is an area of concern for us. Because of the tailings from the nuclear plant that was there, the sediment had just got all kinds of problems with it. The Canadian government spent close to $1.25 billion on trying to repair that problem. They've just recently moved in with around $144 million into Hamilton Harbor on the Randall Reef to attempt to resolve the issues there of the sediment and the terrible fillings in that sediment that have come likely from the steel plants that were immediately adjacent. So all of these issues cost a lot of money to address and resolve. So it can't always just be measured by, say, well, only 7 have graduated. Actually, there are probably another dozen that are relatively close to the graduation stage.
Okay, having said that, is there any damage to the Great Lakes that has been done that you know of that is permanent? It's just not going to come back.
I'm going to say yes without being specific. Some of these areas, let's talk about 1,000 years. There's, for instance, mine operations that will contaminate an area for 1,000 years. Is that permanent? In my book, it's permanent.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
In 1987, the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement between the United States and Canada created the so-called Areas of Concern, the most severely polluted areas in the Great Lakes Basin. There are 43 areas of concern, 26 in the U.S., 12 in Canada, and 5 are shared by both countries. To date, 7 areas of concern have been removed from the list, 4 in the U.S. and 3 in Canada. 2 areas have been listed as, quote, in recovery, Jackfish Bay on Lake Superior and Spanish Harbor on Lake Huron. In order to be delisted, areas of concern must target and remediate what are known as beneficial use impairments, and these include beach closings, restrictions on fish and wildlife consumption, restrictions on drinking water consumption, the presence of tumors in fish, bird or animal deformities and reproductive issues, eutrophication or undesirable algae, and loss of fish and wildlife habitat. Cleaning up these sites is, of course, very expensive. In 2007, Environment Canada estimated the cleanup cost for the Canadian areas of concern at $3.5 billion. Okay, some more background on all of the Great Lakes. David, get us started. What are some of the biggest problems that you're seeing as you look at the whole Great Lakes Basin?
Well, the number one area of concern problem has been contaminated sediments from the very beginning. With industrial discharges over many, many years, a lot of contaminants, particularly PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, have wound up in those sediments. It's a very expensive process. There was a lot of resistance to it at the outset as well, people saying, you're only going to make it worse by digging it up, and they were thinking about mechanical dredging. But hydraulic dredging, which is like a big vacuum cleaner, was developed relatively quickly. And slowly but surely, we were able to demonstrate that you can remove these sediments effectively without contaminating the water column. It's expensive, and that has been the biggest hurdle all along. That has been one of the biggest ones. Combined sewer overflows from municipalities is a big one. A lot of the habitat has been degraded. Those are some of the serious problems.
Let me do a follow-up on the chemicals. The chemicals that are in the water because of overflow from industrial use, have they been there, some of them, for 100 years?
Oh, yeah, easily. The steel industry on southeast side of Chicago and northwest Indiana has been there since before 1900, and they just built up and built up and built up over the years. and nothing had been done about them. And they slowly seeped out into the lakes as well.
And they never go away, do they?
No, they don't.
Wendy, what would you add to that list as you look at the areas of concern across the Great Lakes Basin?
I think that I agree with Dave that some of the biggest problems we see initially are some of the contaminated sediment issues. But we also are seeing a lot of issues related to habitat loss and degradation as a result of urbanization in some of the areas of concern. So in addition to trying to clean up the sediments, we are taking areas where habitat has actually been lost and trying to put habitat back into some of the areas of concern, and finding that it actually can be somewhat expensive to do that because you're recreating environment that just basically was eliminated from some of these areas of concern.
I understand why, if there's a nuclear plant on the shores, there will be issues associated with that, or if there's a steel company on the shores, there will be issues associated with that. But absent those things, do you know why a particular area of concern becomes a particular area of concern? Is there something endemic to that area that makes it so?
Well, I think just it's the level of degradation. These places were severely degraded places for a variety of reasons. Some of them were contaminated sediments, some of them were degraded fish populations, algae and so on in the water. It depended on the area because some sites like Hamilton were, heavily industrialized. Toronto was highly urbanized, and then our northern AOCs, it was, pulp and paper mills. They, I can remember as a kid traveling to Expo 67, you could smell Cornwall before you could see it, and it was really the pulp and paper. Those were big and obvious problems.
Well, I'm from Hamilton, as are you, Cam. We used to have a joke when I was growing up in Hamilton, which is I would never want to live in a city where I couldn't see the air I was breathing. Now, and it's funny how much things have changed, because I know when I was a kid and you used to see all the stuff coming out of the stacks at Stelco and Dofasco, and you knew what was going in the water there, you know what we called that 50 years ago? We called that progress. They were employing tens of thousands of people down there. You have a bit of a different view of it today, I guess, eh?
We do, especially given that tens of thousands of those jobs that might have paid $70,000 30 years ago, those have evaporated. It's a very different economy in Hamilton now. And in fact, many of the people that we meet who are out rediscovering the environment around the bay, having returned to the city after 20, 30 years, can't believe their eyes. There's a burgeoning new culture, I think, that doesn't hold on to that we're Hamilton, we don't deserve nice things kind of attitude.
I get that, but you know what? 60 years ago, I think there was a Toronto urban planning professor who called Hamilton the world's largest and most beautiful septic tank. Is that a fair description back then?
Yes, it would have been accurate, actually.
And how about today?
Completely turned around, in fact. I had a committee member one time at a meeting say that our job at BARC is not to cheerlead for the municipal government, for example. And I said, Hamilton Water has great leadership, lots of great progressive ideas. I'm not happy necessarily with everything that the city's doing, but I go on the front page of the Spectator in pom-poms and a tutu for really great projects. And so you have up until 1964, it's fair to say, almost unmitigated sewage flowing into the bay. Just a frightening amount.
One of the things we've learned this week is that Canada often talks a good game on environmental issues, and we like to think of ourselves as being a very environmental nation, but oftentimes we're more sanctimonious than effective, and in fact the Americans are ahead of us on a lot of stuff. Why is that?
That's a very difficult question to answer, and I think we've seen variations in that over time. If you look at the past 10 years, for example, you may see it relating to the political leadership in our country and what their priorities happen to be. I want to be cautiously optimistic that the political leadership now, who have been there and acknowledge globally that climate change is human-induced. I mean, our Prime Minister has said that. I don't think we would have seen that from our previous Prime Minister. Unlikely, perhaps. But I think there's a change in understanding what Canada really is and where Canada should be a leader, and I think we are having to catch up now with the United States, and it's not a bad thing. At least we're catching up with the United States.
Sapna, let me follow up with you on the issue of the fisheries. What kind of impact is climate change having on fish life in the Great Lakes?
Well, actually, so Jennifer talked about increased surface water temperatures and increased water temperatures in general. And what that's leading to is an increase in the spread and distribution of warm water fishes, some of which are invasive, like the smallmouth bass, and also a decrease in cool water fishes and cold water fish habitat, as well as their distribution, such as walleye or pickerel, you might have known them as, or lake trout. And so we're seeing the spread of these invasive warm water fishes throughout Ontario moving northwards.
This is the smallmouth bass, for example?
The bass,
Why is that a problem if it's more proliferating?
It's a problem because they're such voracious predators. So they consume a lot of the minnows. They consume the fish that the walleye and lake trout eat. And they also, so they compete with them, but they also predate on their young. And so that's declining our native cool water and cold water fisheries that are important to our Canadian identity.
So we don't like the smallmouth bass?
No, we don't.
Interesting.
And a lot of bass are being spread by humans. And so curtailing the invasion of bass throughout Canada, not just in Ontario, is an important way to protect our fishery.
Okay. Let me put a huge issue on the table right now, because obviously we're at a point in our history where people are debating, what do we do now? Do we try to reverse the effects of climate change and hope that we can make progress in turning things back? Or we are where we are, and we're just going to have to learn how to adapt to all of these realities that we now seem to be faced with? Let's go around the horn on that, please.
Well, I think there's a place for both. The idea of mitigation, where you're trying to do things like burn less fossil fuels in order to curb climate change. But also, I think adaptation is incredibly important, because adaptation is what you do regardless of what's causing climate change. It's occurring, and we know it's occurring. So what do you do, regardless if it's going to be very severe or even moderate in the future, to protect ourselves and become more resilient to what the climate's actually doing?
Your thoughts, Gail?
I agree with Jennifer. Mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions within the Great Lakes region itself is not going to help the Great Lakes region. It has to be a much larger initiative. That's not to say we shouldn't be doing it, but it's very true that these floods that we're seeing, the spread of bass that we don't want, these various activities that are affecting us, even the crops that we can grow under a different climate. These are very real things that we need to start recognizing, and our predictions, we can start doing them now. We can stop combined sewer overflows if we know that they're going to be increasing in frequency. We can engineer infrastructure differently now and have no regrets, even if it's not as severe as we thought, because population is going to grow anyway. We're going to need the infrastructure. There's many things that we need to be doing now, because to ignore the fact that climate change is real means that the insults to the region and to human health and property will just continue to increase.
Mitigation versus adaptation, where are you?
I think both needs to happen, obviously, but I also think we need to accept the fact that climate is already changing quite a bit in this region. So one of our recent studies that we did, we looked at water temperatures around the world and how they've changed in the last 25 years. Lake Superior was the second fastest warming lake in the world, and in a 25-year period has increased by over 3 degrees Celsius. And the Great Lakes on average have warmed by 1.5 degrees Celsius in the last 25 years. And so just thinking about how ice has changed, how water temperatures have changed, how water quality has already changed, I think that should bring the impetus to, we really have to act now. It's not something about the future. We know that it could get worse, but we have to realize that it's already changing.
I want to find out, Joel, what you believe the most pressing issues around the Great Lakes are today.
Well, Steve, as you said in your intro, one of the biggest pressing issue is just getting everybody involved with taking care of the Great Lakes. We've got, as everybody often cites, nearly 20% of the world's fresh surface water right here in our backyards, and it's a tremendous asset. Everybody uses it in their own way and draws some benefit from it, we hope, and the job is getting everybody involved and helping to make sure it's restored and protected for generations to come. That's job one.
Mary, what would you say is the most pressing issue on the Great Lakes today?
I think I would say climate change, and part of it is because we don't really know what it's going to do. It's kind of scary. We know we're going to get more extreme weather events, such as we've had,
But on balance, given the summer we just had with very warm temperatures and drought, on balance, the climate models are predicting lowering water levels. So, yeah.
And that's something to be concerned about, obviously.
That's something to be concerned about. The Great Lakes are mainly a finite resource, a gift from the retreat of the Ice Age. So when we start drawing down that finite resource, we're lowering.
Cameron?
Yeah, I think I've got two answers for you, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. One is absolutely public engagement. That is the issue. The other issues will change and go up and down. Sometimes like lake levels, they'll come and go. But if we don't have an ongoing engaged citizenry caring about the lakes, then our ability as government officials can wax and wane to be able to take care of those problems. The second one is just the water. Always follow the water. So we need to make sure that water quality is what it ought to be, because when it's not, it hurts us. How we treat the Great Lakes is a signal of how we treat ourselves.
Michael.
So I agree with everything that's been said. I guess I would add the problem of toxic and nuisance algae in Lake Erie as a pressing current concern.
Because?
Well, it's a threat to human health. It's a threat to the environment. It's also a threat to the economy. And we've seen a tremendous increase in algae over the last few years. So that's our #1 issue right now.
I mean, obviously lots of people watching us live near the Great Lakes, but lots don't. So if you live 10 hours north of the Great Lakes and you don't know why algae's a problem in Lake Erie, explain.
So algae, the impacts of algae are algae toxins, which actually are, as I mentioned, a threat to human health. So algae toxins caused the Toledo, Ohio drinking water plant to close down in 2014. Also Pelee Island drinking water treatment plants. But it's also causing impacts on the environment as well. What's causing it is runoff of nutrients from agricultural lands and from municipal sewage treatment plants.
Got it. Joel, how are we doing in terms of making sure that we've got the right kind of science in place to monitor the Great Lakes so we actually know what's going wrong?
Well, building on what Michael just said about nutrients in Lake Erie, one of the big challenges right now is figuring out how do we know that the dollars we're investing and the time we're spending on the ground to solve these problems is actually working. And that's really important because we're not talking about small problems. We're talking about solutions that cost hundreds of millions, if not into the billions of dollars. And so I was really pleased earlier last year when a group of scientists from a few Midwest universities kind of laid out where some of the nutrient problems in Lake Erie are coming from and laid out what's going to need to happen in order to solve those problems. The next step beyond that is making sure we're actually monitoring what's happening in the water so we know if the dollars we're investing in solving these problems and the actions we're taking are actually working. The public really needs to hear, at least every year, a transparent, clear report on whether or not we're making progress. That's so important to the credibility of our programs and to continuing to build that public support for the Great Lakes that I know we all want.
Mary, same to you. Georgian Bay is your thing. You care about that as much as you care about anything in this world, I bet. And I want to know whether you think we have the science in place to monitor that bay so that you know what's going on there.
I think it's a really good question. Georgian Bay contains the most extensive, high-quality wetlands found anywhere in the Great Lakes, by far. They are under threat with climate change, with warming water temperatures and declining water levels. So, no, we need to do a better job of managing the mainly finite resource in the Great Lakes. And right now, we're able to retain water in Lake Superior and Lake Ontario, but that huge body of water in between Michigan, Huron, Georgian Bay, it's kind of being used as a pressure relief valve for the other Great Lakes. When there's too much water in Lake Superior, discharge it south. When there's not enough, hold it back. And it's a huge body of water. The St. Clair River has been altered by humans for over 100 years.
Altered by humans, meaning dredged. I guess that's what you mean?
Yes, yeah. Shoreline alterations, you name it. Gravel and sand mining. It's been assaulted for over 100 years. And many times, compensation structures have been designed and approved, never put in place. We think it's time to, facing climate change, to develop the ability to retain water in all of the Great Lakes and manage it with one control board instead of the way it is now.
Okay, I'm going to leave that aside for a second because I want to find out from Cam how effectively you think the governments on both sides of the border are taking action on the information that science is presenting to them.
Sure. Well, I think we are taking action. We have in the U.S. something called the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which has helped us on any number of levels, Steve, in terms of taking action. One thing is it's provided us with an influx of resources so that we can take action. Number two, it's really helped us create a tent under which we can coordinate better amongst all of our federal departments for that taking action. So I think it's happening. Can we do more? Can we do better? I think the answer to that is always. But in terms of the backlog of threats and problems and fixes that we've needed to undertake, it's happening. That's why we see for the first time in years and years, 3 of our toxic hotspot areas of concern have been knocked off the list just in the past 6 years compared to only 1 in the previous 20 years before our initiative started.
Why do you think that is?
It's for the reasons that we have a good influx of resources. I don't think we've needed more policy on this front. I don't think we've needed more monitoring. I think we have needed an influx of dollars to help get these places cleaned up and these local economies back on the grid.
I want to go back to the history here. Chief Day, get us started. How important have the Great Lakes been for indigenous nations living near them?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said about the historical perspective, and that being we all need water. We've got water in front of us here today, but we've got an infinite connection to the water through harvesting, through water ceremonies, basically a way of life. Our people have always known that most of our being is made of water. Most living things are made of water, and that was something that our people seen as not so much the right aspect of it, but the responsibility and the obligations that we would have to the water. And that being said, a lot of our ceremonies and protocols are about the water and the responsibility of such.
Madam Chair, how would you describe the connection between the Métis Nation of Ontario and the Great Lakes in this province?
Well, very similar to what Chief Day was saying. We're very connected to the water. I mean, we're born, our first instances are in water. We're born out of water. And also for the Métis, it was our transport, our highways. And that's how, because we were born into the fur trade, out of the fur trade. And that was our highway, that was our route. So along with using it, and like we still do, we have responsibility to it also. And I think we hold that very high up in what we do.
Chief Day, you hinted at this in your first answer, but I'd like a little more information about this. The spiritual connection to the lakes. In your everyday activities, in your ceremonies, describe that for us if you would.
Well, the first instance of water is the child is actually in the womb and surrounded by water. Many elders, they have been given instruction about how to teach as early as toddlers, what the purpose and the importance of water is, and that water comes in many forms. It comes in human form. It comes in the form of in the air. It's in rivers. It's in lakes. It's in animals, and it's something that we refer to as the lifeblood of Mother Earth. And we know the value system is based on the fact that without water, we will perish. It's very important to underscore that women in our culture, Indigenous culture, are the ones that are predominantly responsible for the water because of the connection of the birthing cycle, and it's one that in today's perspectives and the discussions that we're having around the protection of the Great Lakes is very much people like Josephine Mondamin who took the time to walk around the Great Lakes and continues to walk on behalf of water. So the prominence of water from a spiritual sense, it's very deep, and it's one we could speak days and volumes on, and it's a never-ending discussion.
Tell me that name again, Josephine?
Josephine Mondamin.
And she is who?
She is somebody, she's a Anishinaabe. She's from Manitoulin Island. She walked around the Great Lakes over the last decade, and her efforts are to raise awareness. And it was at a time when we really were not so much focused on water. But what she saw was pollution in the Great Lakes, and she saw that her role in her clan, being a fish clan, she felt it was important to raise that level of awareness, and she pretty much dedicates her life to teaching, so much so that she's an advisor to Minister Glenn Murray on the Great Lakes Guardianship Council in the Great Lakes.
He, of course, Ontario's Environment and Climate Change Minister. Yes. How about for you? A similar spiritual connection to the Great Lakes?
It's very similar spiritual connection. I mean, our people do our knowledge transfer also around the lakes, and the water for them is very, very important, as Chief was saying. That's from where we start. The other thing, too, is that we got to realize that water is everywhere, but it transports our essential nutrients. It transports our food and the food of the plants and the animals, and it also sometimes transports pollution because we put it there, but it's so much a big part of not only who we are, but a big part of our land and of the earth that we live on, that if we don't take care of it, then we put everything in jeopardy, everything in peril.
The Métis history in Ontario goes back how far? How many years?
Oh, it goes back as far as, you know, that they were born, Métis were born out of First Nations women and European men, which made mixed breed. And I hate using the word breed because I was raised.
Has a connotation nowadays.
Yes, I remember describing myself as a mutt. But anyhow, that was then. It was trying to make people understand who we are.
So it's talking 400 years anyway.
We've been here for like ever. Part of our heritage has been here forever. And then we came together as a people with the same history and the same values and the same stories. And, you know, that's how we became a people.
So when you talk about the connection to the water, you're talking about birch bark canoes 400 years ago?
I'm talking about birch bark canoe. I'm talking about the first economy of Canada, which was the fur trade. All the transporting of goods back and forth, the furs going out to the European countries and the goods that they were trading for going into more Western Canada. And yeah, it's been a big, big part of who we are.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website at tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, and on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.